Good morning. Father Richard, Father Malachi, our dear trustees, members of the administration, the faculty, friends and family, and most importantly, the class of 2015. This will be the first time in the history of this university that the graduate class is larger than the undergraduate class, and it tells you where this university is going. 35 years ago today, I witnessed my dear friend, Father Richard, being ordained as a priest. It was a great day for all who have been affected by his wisdom. Let me thank him and Father Malachi for their great leadership in making St. Francis University a school we're all so proud of. And permit me to express my deepest gratitude for the privilege of addressing this body. I stood on this stage 2 years before Father Richard's ordination at my own graduation. I was a young man then. There are many things I remember. I worried whether my own family was okay in a place that had become my world. I worried whether all this effort would lead to a job that made me happy. I worried about the sacrifices my family made to get me here. And I worried about the money that had been spent on the effort. Unfortunately, I have no clue who the commencement speaker was, and no idea what they said. So I'll try to keep it short. Today we gather here to affirm your success. Having spent 8 years going to graduate schools at night, let me assure you, what you've accomplished will be worth it. You may not see it right away. The path is not always a straight one. What you have accomplished today symbolizes an end as well as a beginning. As you begin your new journey, what is the measure of a person that makes them a legend? Like St. Francis. What is the measure of a person that will help them get to heaven? Like St. Francis. The measure is what we do with the life that is presented us. That measure includes developing the seeds of greatness we all have inside us. That measure is maximizing our time helping others, providing the greatest good for the greatest number of people. It's a choice of your vision for the future. Permit me to tell you a story, not of the Senate, but something that was the most significant event in my life. In 2010, I started a law firm with a former U.S. Senator by the name of Ted Stevens. He had been the chairman of the Appropriations Committee. Another gentleman by the name of Bill Phillips. He was a tremendous entrepreneur. So the firm was Stevens, Phillips, and Morhard. I'd hoped it would be Stevens, Morhard, and Phillips, but I lost the coin toss. It was going well, and that same year we decided we'd go on a fishing trip. And we went to Alaska, and on the trip was Sean O'Keefe, who was the former director of NASA, his son Kevin, who was 19, Bill Phillips' son, Willie, he was 13. Dana Tyndall was the legal counsel of the company who owned the lodge we were going to, and she brought her daughter, Corey, 16. We were at this lodge about 100 miles away from civilization, and we had to fly in on a float plane. And the first day we went by float plane to a river called the Nushagak. And to give you an idea of how good this fishing was, I cast my line 8 times and caught 6 silver salmon. The first night and every night we played poker, and Corey, the 16-year-old, said, I really don't know how to play poker. And about 2 hours later, she had all our money, and we realized we'd been had. From then on, we called her the Shark. The next night, Ted Stevens dealt himself a royal flush straight, which if you're not familiar with poker, that's the best you can do. And rarely does a person ever get a royal flush straight, let alone deal himself one. So he took our money the second night. And to say the least, I wasn't too happy. And at one point I said, Senator, you realize all your staff are Catholic and you're not? He looked at me and said, shut up and play poker. The next day, the weather was bad, and Bill Phillips and I decided we'd go fly fishing in front of the lodge. We talked about our families, children, the future we were putting together for ourselves. Had a wonderful morning and got done, went to lunch, and we were sitting around. The pilot came in and said, I think the weather's changed, and I think we could fly to the Nushagak today to go salmon fishing again. So we all piled into the plane and took off, and it was a de Havilland Otter float plane. There were 9 of us. And if you look at your seats, if you look 3 across and about 4 back, that's about the size of the cabin we were in. And as we were flying, the clouds had closed in, so there really wasn't worth looking at anything outside. And we were pretty much in our thoughts because the noise of the aircraft was so loud. About 15 minutes into it, I remember a split second of feeling the impact of flying into a mountain at 155 miles an hour. 3 minutes later, not yet opening my eyes, I realized you can survive a plane crash. I looked down at Bill Phillips, who was lying next to me, and I knew he was gone. It was at that moment I knew that God was right here with us. And I knew this was not my plan, but his plan. The pilot was in front of me. Corey and her mother, Dana Tyndall, were next to me, and the senator was right behind them. They had all died instantly. Willie, the 13-year-old, I don't think he had a seatbelt on, and he flew over my head and was ejected out of the plane. So we really didn't know where he was. Sean's son, Kevin, was slumped in the co-pilot seat, not responding. Sean was spitting out shards of teeth. The seats were rated for 20 Gs. All of them but one were sheared off. They're now jumbled together with our lost friends at the front of the plane. And there really was no place for me to go except for the back of the plane. The plane's tail pointed down at a 30-degree angle. I slid face first and ended up almost upside down. Soon Willie appeared from outside and faced the reality of his father that was lying there. A few minutes later, Kevin came to Sean's relief, and the search for a satellite phone, first aid, and food began. Willie was the only one who could move, so he started, to his credit, standing above what he was facing for the rest of his life. Storm beat down on the roof. You could smell the rain, and you could smell the death that was in that compartment. We knew that few are found in Alaska, and there are so many crashes when it happens. About 6 p.m., Willie, still very upset, came back to me and he said, "Jim, do you really believe my father's dead?" And I said, "Willie, I'm so sorry, but he is." I said, "Why don't we say the rosary?" And so the two of us started out saying Hail Marys and Our Fathers. And then there were 3, and then there were 4 Catholic boys saying the rosary. as the rain beat down on us. But miraculously, the minute we stopped saying the rosary, we started hearing airplanes. You can draw your own conclusions on how that works. I can tell you I have. The engine noise came closer and then farther away. And our hopes rose and fell as they got closer and then farther. But miraculously, one found us and swooped down. And to Sean's credit, he got Willie to get his hand out in the crack in the plane. We now had hope they had seen us and knew someone was alive. Now it was our issue of staying alive. At 8 o'clock that night, in the darkness, a doctor and 2 EMTs and a nurse landed way above us and had to mountain climb down to us. When they got to the plane, they were wet, hypothermic, and exhausted. They proceeded to give us what clothing they had. But due to the weather, they broke it to us we would not get rescued that night. They feared the plane would slide down the mountain with all of us in it. I felt paralyzed, and I asked her if I'd die that night. She determinedly said not on her watch. All night she and one EMT sat next to me, and we talked of our families, our children, and our friends that were there next to us. Later she told me she was sure I would have died that night. In the morning, I woke up to the Air National Guard and Coast Guard helicopters that were above us as they lowered rescue swimmers actually, to get us out. They had to cut the plane, a hole in the plane to get us out, and I feared the sparks of the saw would ignite the turbo fuel that was everywhere. The long physical and mental journey of recovery had begun. The reason I tell you this story is that often we don't get to choose what happens to us, but we do get to choose how we respond. There are no rules to this thing we call life, but there are choices. Our struggles are similar, and the ways to overcome them apply to all of us. The plane crash was a lifetime of challenges crammed into 17 and a half hours of survival. Yet looking back, it led to the most positive experiences ever to happen to me. Lying upside down in the back of that plane, without being able to move for those hours, forced me to rely on a 13-year-old who had just lost his father. And we had just met 3 days before. He helped the rest of us who were unable to help ourselves. So my hope for you is that you choose to measure a person by the size of their heart and not their job or their status in life. That day, it was the size of Willie's heart that gave him the ability to help us while his father lay there. Inside that plane, it didn't matter whether you had been a senator or the NASA director. One lived, one died. A 13-year-old lived, a 16-year-old died. Measure a person for their goodness, not their stature or their age. And civility is not a sign of weakness. Father Richard once told me, we need to be in the presence of God in all we do. That day, my life hung in the balance between this life and the other. God was right here with us. My hope is that we choose to be aware on a real-time basis that God is right here with us now, and always has been, and always will be, every second of our lives. Our lives will be so much fuller if we remember this simple fact. My hope for you is that you choose and I choose to be acutely aware of how blessed we are to be alive. As I witnessed, it can abruptly end. My hope is that we choose in the face of adversity to do our very best. Sometimes we will fail. We must get over it and move forward. It is not the challenges that determine our lives. It is what we do with them. My hope is that we choose to have faith in the midst of doubt. I had to decide whether I'd get out of a chair I sat in for 3 years afterwards, trying to assimilate what happened and trying how to learn to walk again, physically and mentally, and focus on trying to slingshot forward to a better life. At times, it will test us to our very core. If we're to flourish, our trust in God must be brought to bear. My hope is that we choose to pray for courage, because every day we have to make choices on the things that really matter. Dignity, work, love, and kindness. Will we be paralyzed by our past and our past failures, or will we forgive ourselves enough to be unchained? History, despite its pain, need not be lived again. Each new day can give birth to the dreams we desire. Find the courage to begin again. My hope is that we choose to never give up. Sean and I had life-threatening injuries. We were dying that day. Before they found us, bears were nearby. We were hypothermic and had very little hope of being found. Sean was screaming at me, Jimmy, you've got to stay awake. And I was starting to fade out. The lesson is that the person that exudes grit is determined, disciplined, and persistent, will enjoy successes never imagined. And my hope is that we keep on an ongoing dialogue with whoever we believe in. The power of prayer is so underestimated. These prayers often begin in the morning. Afterwards, the simple act of making our bed sets us up to accomplish more tasks. It provides us a sense of achievement. Willie getting his hand out was a simple task, but it reinforces the little things, like making your bed, matter. And if we can't do the little things, we won't be able to do the big things. So make your bed. Our lives are so precious and yet so fleeting. We're all blessed to be alive. Get up every day and thank God you're here. Pray for forgiveness, courage, and humble wisdom. And then make your bed. People ask me what was the defining moment in that event. And it was a time when hope was fading, and the shadows in that plane were growing. The wind chill was 30 degrees and dropping, and all options in our control had been eliminated. This was a miracle of survival where there shouldn't have been one. Miracles do happen. We need to maximize our time here helping others. I'm not offering that this is an easy path. You are part of something much, much larger. You have a foundation from St. Francis now. Good things have been instilled in us here that few have. I made lasting relationships here. Friends that I see in the audience and on the platform today. Friends who were there for me when the excitement wore off. Friends who believed more than me that I could become the Deputy Sergeant at Arms of the United States Senate. What golden friends I have. It was here at St. Francis I learned to disagree without being disagreeable, that it's possible to compromise without compromising the values I was taught here. It was here I learned to listen to others and to find the best in them. We have a choice. We can make the best of it or the worst of it. I hope you make the best of it. I hope you see things that stop you. I hope you feel the joy of a purposeful life. I hope you live a life you're proud of, and if you're not, I hope you have the strength to start over again. You are moments away from graduating, moments away from forging a new future for yourself and your family. It will not be easy. Start each day with a task completed. Respect everyone. Know that life is not fair and you will fail often. Pray like it's all that matters, and take action like you're all that matters. Anticipate and believe in God's blessings. Step up when the times are toughest. Lift up those who can't help you, and never, never give up. These challenges are within God's ability. He will take you places you've never dreamed of. You will have successes you cannot imagine. And most importantly, you will be more worthy of getting to heaven. So as I humbly stand here before you, I look upon my years and take pride in saying, I too am a graduate from St. Francis University. I hope you guys have an unbelievable life. Thank you so much. And make your bed. Go Red Flash.